The star maps of the Galactic Council showed danger zones in red. Most sectors had small red dots marking asteroid fields or dying stars, but one sector was completely red. Sector 7 Alpha contained a yellow star called Sol, and around it orbited a blue-green planet that nobody was allowed to visit. High Admiral Zephus stood before the massive holographic display in his command center. His four arms moved across the controls as he studied the forbidden sector. The Veltar warrior was 8 feet tall, covered in biomechanical armor that gleamed like black metal. His race had conquered 47 star systems. They were the strongest military force in this part of the galaxy. Admiral, his aide said, walking up to him. The Council has sent another warning about Sector 7 Alpha. They say we must stay away from the planet called Earth. Zephus made a sound like laughing, but deeper and more threatening. The Council is weak. They see danger where we see opportunity. What could a primitive world possibly do to the mighty Veltar? The aide pulled up the official warnings on his tablet. Sir, 3 expeditions have disappeared near that planet. The last transmission from Captain Vexhi's fleet was just screaming. Then nothing. Vexhi was a fool, Zephus said. He waved one of his arms and the display zoomed in on Earth. Look at this world. No energy shields around the planet. No massive defense stations. These humans still use chemical rockets to leave their atmosphere. They are barely more advanced than the primitive species we conquered on Nextor. The automated warning systems kicked in as they looked at Earth's data. A mechanical voice spoke in the common galactic language. Warning. This system contains an apex predator species. All ships must maintain distance of 50 light-years minimum. Approach prohibited by Council Directive 2847. Violation punishable by exile to the dark regions. Zephus turned off the warning with an angry gesture. Apex predators? These humans fight each other with projectile weapons. They have not even learned to harness quantum energy properly. The Council spreads these lies to keep the valuable resources of Earth for themselves. His aide looked nervous. But sir, the warnings come from 17 different species. Even the Hive Queens agree that the Hive Queens are insects, Zephus interrupted. They fear everything that moves. And the other species? They are jealous of Veltar's strength. They want to stop us from claiming the riches of this untouched world. Zephus walked to the viewing window of his flagship. Outside, the Veltar fleet floated in perfect formation. 12 massive dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a small moon. 48 frigates armed with plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes. 200,000 Veltar warriors, each one enhanced with computer implants and molecular weapons. No force in the galaxy could stand against them. Prepare the fleet for Operation Harvest, Zephus commanded. We will show the galaxy what happens when they try to keep secrets from the Veltar supremacy. The aide hesitated. Admiral, perhaps we should ask the Council for permission first. The penalties for entering the Forbidden Zone are... Zephus grabbed the smaller alien with 2 of his arms and lifted him off the ground. The Council serves us, not the other way around. We took their precious trade routes. We conquered their strongest allies. Now we will take this mysterious Earth and prove that the Veltar fear nothing. He dropped the aide and activated the fleet communication system. His voice boomed across 200 ships. Warriors of the Supremacy. For too long, the weak Council has told us where we can and cannot go. They claim a primitive world is too dangerous for us to visit. Today we prove them wrong. Today we claim Earth for the glory of the Veltar. The response was immediate. Thousands of warriors roared their approval across the communication channels. Weapon systems powered up. Engines began to warm for the jump to hyperspace. But as the fleet prepared to leave, more warnings came through subspace. The messages arrived in dozens of languages from species across the galaxy. Do not go to Earth. Turn back while you still can. The humans are not what they appear to be. Protect your people. We beg you, Veltar, listen to those who tried before you. Zephus deleted each message without reading it completely. Weakness disgusted him. Fear disgusted him. The Veltar had not become the masters of 47 worlds by listening to cowards. Sir, his navigation officer called out, the hyperspace calculations are complete. We can reach the Sol system in 6 standard days. Then we leave immediately. Zephus ordered. And send a message to the Council. Tell them that when we return, Earth will belong to the Veltar supremacy. The fleet jumped to hyperspace in a flash of blue light. Behind them, automated beacons continued to broadcast their warnings into empty space. As they traveled through hyperspace, Zephus studied everything the Council databases contained about Earth. The information was limited, but what he saw only confirmed his beliefs. The humans were divided into separate nations that often fought each other. Their technology was primitive. Their weapons used chemical explosions and simple projectiles. They had barely begun to explore their own star system. "Look at this," he told his officers, showing them images of human cities. They build straight up into the air instead of underground like intelligent species. They have no protection from orbital bombardment. Their military uses wheeled vehicles that move along the ground. Even the weakest Veltar patrol could conquer their largest army. His weapons officer nodded agreement. "Their space stations are tiny, Admiral. Our smallest frigate carries more firepower than their entire orbital infrastructure. And their population," added the intelligence officer. "Over 7 billion humans crowded onto one small world. They will make excellent slaves once we demonstrate our superiority." Zephus felt satisfaction growing in his chest. Earth would be the greatest conquest in Veltar history. Not only would they gain a rich world full of resources, but they would prove that the Council's warnings were meaningless. Other species would see that the Veltar could go anywhere and take anything they wanted. On the 4th day of their journey, they received one final transmission. It came from an old hive queen whose species had been among the first to encounter humans centuries ago. "Please, Admiral Zephus," the transmission said. "I am old and have seen many wars. I have watched strong species become extinct overnight. The humans seem weak and divided, but this is how they hunt. They appear harmless until it is too late. My hive lost 3 million warriors learning this truth. Do not make the same mistake." Zephus turned off the transmission before it finished. He had heard enough whining from inferior species. "2 more days to Earth," he announced to his fleet. "Prepare all weapons. Ready the invasion troops. The humans will learn to fear the Veltar." Name. But as his ships moved through hyperspace toward the Sol system, long-range sensors were already tracking their approach. On Earth, in command centers buried deep beneath mountains and ocean floors, alarms began to sound. Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force looked at the sensor readings and shook her head sadly. "How many ships?" she asked. 200, ma'am," her aide replied. "Looks like a full battle fleet." Chen sighed. "Send the final warning on all frequencies. Tell them they have one chance to turn around. And if they don't listen?" Chen looked out at the blue sky above Earth through the command center's reinforced windows. Somewhere up there, hidden among the stars and planets, humanity's true defenses waited silently. "Then they'll learn why we put up those warning signs," she said, quietly. "God help them." The Veltar fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Zephus expected to find a quiet solar system with primitive satellites orbiting a backward world. Instead, his sensors immediately detected something that made him pause. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, "we're being scanned. Multiple sources throughout the system." Zephus looked at the tactical display. Red dots appeared everywhere, around Jupiter near Saturn's moons in the asteroid belt, and in orbit around the blue-green planet called Earth. Hundreds of objects that his computers couldn't identify were pointing sensors directly at his fleet. "How is this possible?" Zephus muttered. "The intelligence report said these humans barely had spaceflight capability. Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from Earth." The main screen activated, showing a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She had short gray hair and cold blue eyes that seemed to look right through Zephus. When she spoke, her voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered a restricted system despite multiple warnings. This is your final opportunity to leave peacefully. Turn your ships around and go home." Zephus laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Human, you are speaking to High Admiral Zephus of the Veltar Supremacy. We have conquered 47 star systems. Your primitive world will be the 48th. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. You were warned to stay away. Every species in the galaxy tried to tell you. Now you'll learn why. The transmission ended. Zephus stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to his weapons officer. Destroy their largest moon. Show these humans what real power looks like. Sir, which weapon should we use? The quantum disruptor. Let them watch their moon. Turn to dust. The flagship's main weapon charged up, building energy that could tear apart the molecular structure of anything it hit. The beam lanced out across space toward Earth's moon. For a moment, Zephus smiled. No species had ever seen their homeworld's moon destroyed and continued to resist. But the beam never reached its target. Something intercepted it halfway there. A field of energy appeared in space, absorbing the quantum disruptor blast completely. The moon continued to orbit Earth as if nothing had happened. Impossible, Zephus whispered. No known technology can stop a quantum disruptor. Admiral, his sensor officer's voice was shaking. I'm detecting energy buildups throughout the system. Whatever they're using to defend themselves, it's bigger than anything in our databases. Before Zephus could respond, space around his fleet erupted in motion. Objects that his sensors had mistaken for asteroids suddenly came to life. What he had thought were natural formations were actually camouflaged weapons platforms. Incoming projectiles, the tactical officer shouted. But these weren't the primitive missiles Zephus expected. The objects moving toward his fleet were traveling at impossible speeds. His computers calculated their velocity and returned numbers that made no sense. Sir, those projectiles are moving at 15% of light speed. That's not possible with chemical propulsion. The first projectile hit the frigate VTS Dominator. The tungsten rod, no bigger than a telephone pole, punched through the ship's quantum shields like they weren't there. It tore through the hull, through the engine room, through the reactor, and out the other side. The frigate exploded in a ball of plasma that lit up the darkness, but the projectile kept going. It hit the cruiser VTS Annihilator next, then the destroyer VTS Subjugator, then finally came to rest buried deep in the hull of a dreadnought. 4 ships destroyed by a single piece of metal. Return fire, Zephus screamed. All weapons, destroy everything. The Veltar fleet opened up with everything they had. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, molecular disruptors, and gravity bombs filled space with deadly energy. For a moment, Zephus thought they had the advantage. His weapons were the most advanced in the galaxy. Then the humans replied, space filled with projectiles moving at incredible speeds. But these weren't just metal rods. Some were streams of ball bearings that tore through Veltar hulls like cosmic shotgun blasts. Others were asteroids that had been hollowed out and packed with fusion bombs, guided by computer systems more advanced than anything the Veltar possessed. They're using kinetic weapons, his science officer reported in amazement. Pure kinetic energy at relativistic speeds. They've turned simple physics into the most deadly weapons in the galaxy. A new type of weapon appeared on the sensors. Something was pulling at the fabric of space itself near 3 of his frigates. The ships began to stretch and distort as an artificial gravity field tore them apart at the molecular level. They have gravity weapons, the science officer whispered. They're using black holes as ammunition. But what horrified Zephus most wasn't the technology, it was the psychology behind it. The humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to send a message. Every weapon they used was designed to be as terrifying as possible. When Veltar warriors tried to board human ships, they found crews who had rigged their own vessels to explode rather than be captured. Human pilots rammed their small fighters into Veltar dreadnoughts while singing something their translators couldn't properly interpret. The communication channels filled with sounds the Veltar had never heard before. Human crews were broadcasting the screams of dying Veltar warriors, mixed with what sounded like primitive war songs and battle cries. The psychological effect was devastating. Veltar soldiers enhanced with fear suppression implants began to panic. Admiral, his communications officer called out, we're losing ships faster than we can count them. The humans are using weapons we've never seen before. They're hacking our systems and turning our own guns against us. On the tactical display, Red dots representing Veltar ships were disappearing one by one. The humans weren't just fighting them. They were hunting them down with systematic precision. Captain Marcus Rodriguez of the TDFS Defiant found his ship surrounded by 5 Veltar frigates. His engines were damaged, his weapons were nearly out of ammunition, and Veltar warriors were cutting through his hull. Rodriguez looked at his crew and made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. "Set the reactor to overload," he ordered calmly. "All hands, it's been an honor serving with you." His communications officer opened a channel to Earth. "Tell my kids Daddy kept the monsters away," Rodriguez said. Then he activated the self-destruct. The explosion vaporized all 5 Veltar frigates and sent a shockwave that damaged 3 more ships. But what shook Zephus to his core wasn't the destruction. It was the fact that the human had smiled as he did it. "These humans are insane," his tactical officer whispered. "They fight like animals backed into a corner." "No," Zephus said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn on him. "They fight like apex predators protecting their territory." On the tactical display, more than half his fleet was gone. The survivors were scattered across the system, being hunted down by human ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. His mighty invasion force was being systematically destroyed by a species he had thought was primitive. "Admiral," his aide said, quietly, "perhaps we should consider retreat." Zephus looked at the carnage on his screens. The humans had weapons that defied everything the Veltar knew about physics. They had tactics that turned every piece of space debris into a weapon. They had a psychology that made them prefer death to defeat. But retreat would mean admitting that the mighty Veltar had been beaten by a species that still used chemical rockets. It would mean the end of the supremacy's reputation as an unstoppable force. "No," Zephus said firmly. "We continue to Earth. Whatever these humans are, they cannot have unlimited resources. We will break through their defenses and claim their world." But even as he gave the order, Zephus felt something he had never experienced before in 4 decades of conquest. For the first time in his life, the High Admiral of the Veltar supremacy was afraid, and they hadn't even reached Earth yet. The battle moved deeper into the Sol system, and with every passing hour, Admiral Zephus learned horrible new truths about human warfare. The Veltar had fought dozens of species across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared them for this. Most civilized species fought according to established rules. They used energy weapons, deployed defensive shields, and followed predictable tactical patterns. The Veltar had built their military doctrine around these expectations. But humans didn't fight like civilized beings. They fought like the predators they truly were. "Admiral, we're detecting massive movement in the asteroid belt," his sensor officer reported. "It looks like the humans are redirecting asteroids toward our fleet." Zephus watched the tactical display in growing horror. The humans weren't just moving a few small rocks. They were redirecting entire asteroids, some of them several kilometers wide, and accelerating them to incredible speeds using methods his scientists couldn't understand. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "Those asteroids mass millions of tons each." His science officer studied the readings with trembling hands. "Sir, they appear to have hollowed out the asteroids and installed fusion drives inside them. But the power requirements should be impossible with their technology level." The first asteroid weapon arrived 20 minutes later. The VTS destroyer tried to evade, but something that massive moving that fast couldn't be avoided. The impact was like watching a moon collide with a ship. The destroyer and 3 nearby frigates simply vanished in a flash of light and debris. But the asteroid wasn't finished. The explosion revealed that it had been packed with fusion warheads. The secondary blast took out 2 more ships and damaged 5 others. "They turned an asteroid into a guided missile," Zephus whispered. "What kind of species does that?" His answer came from an intercepted human transmission. 2 human ships were coordinating an attack on his remaining dreadnoughts, and their casual conversation chilled him to his core. "Ranger 7, this is Ranger 3. We've got 2 big ugly ones heading for Luna. Want to try the new gravity bombs?" "Affirmative, Ranger 3. Let's see if we can make them dance." The humans deployed weapons that Zephus's science teams insisted were theoretical impossibilities. Portable gravity generators created miniature black holes that lasted just long enough to tear Veltar ships apart. The humans would drop one of these weapons near an enemy vessel, watch it get stretched like rubber, then collapse the field and move on to the next target. This is not possible, his chief scientist reported frantically. They're manipulating fundamental forces like toys. Our most advanced research teams haven't even begun to understand gravitational manipulation. But it wasn't just the impossible technology that broke Veltar morale. It was the way humans used it. They didn't just destroy enemy ships. They played with them first. When Veltar warriors tried to board human vessels, they found crews who had prepared surprises that defied military logic. Human ships were rigged with explosive charges in every corridor. Automatic systems fired streams of projectiles through their own hulls to stop boarders. Human defenders used their own atmosphere as a weapon, flooding compartments with poisonous gas while wearing protective gear. Captain Vextal of the VTS Punisher managed to fight his way to the bridge of a human ship called the TDFS Resilient. He expected to find a command crew cowering in fear. Instead, he found 20 humans calmly working at their stations while their ship fell apart around them. "Surrender!" Vextal roared, his translation device making his words understood. "Your ship is lost." The human captain, a gray-haired woman with scars across her face, looked up from her command console and smiled. "You're right. Our ship is lost. But so are you." She pressed a button, and Vexatel realized that the humans had been using their own ship as bait. The Resilient was packed with enough explosives to take out everything within 1,000 kilometers. The human crew had lured 3 Veltar ships close, then triggered a controlled supernova. The last thing Vextal heard was the humans singing something their computers translated as "Amazing Grace." They were singing as they prepared to die. Back on his flagship, Zephus tried to understand what he was seeing. They're using their own ships as weapons. They're sacrificing themselves deliberately. "It's worse than that, sir," his intelligence officer reported. "We've been monitoring their communications. These aren't desperate last stands. This is coordinated strategy. They call it acceptable losses. And they've calculated exactly how many of their own people they're willing to sacrifice to stop us." The tactical display showed the horrible mathematics of human warfare. For every Veltar ship destroyed, the humans were willing to lose 2 of their own. But human ships were smaller and had smaller crews. The exchange rate was devastating for the Veltar. "They're treating this like a business transaction," Zephus said in amazement. "They've decided that stopping us is worth a specific price in human lives, and they're paying it without hesitation." More intercepted transmissions revealed the true scope of human coordination. Unlike the Veltar, who fought as a single unified force, humans seemed to come from different nations and organizations. But instead of weakening them, this diversity made them stronger. "Attention all vessels, this is Admiral Chen. Russian kinetic platforms are reporting ammunition low. Japanese quantum computers are redirecting targeting to European laser batteries. Australian crews are standing by for ramming actions." Zephus realized that the entire human species had united against his invasion. Every nation, every organization, every individual human had become part of a single war machine focused on one goal: stopping the Veltar. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving tactical data from our remaining ships. The humans aren't just fighting us, they're studying us. Every time we use a weapon, they adapt. Every time we try a new tactic, they counter it within minutes." The humans had turned the battle into a laboratory. They were learning from every engagement, sharing information instantly across their entire fleet, and developing countermeasures in real time. When the Veltar used quantum disruptors, the humans deployed quantum field generators. When Veltar ships tried to use stealth technology, human sensors adapted to new detection methods. But the most terrifying aspect of human warfare wasn't their technology or tactics. It was their psychology. Intercepted human communications revealed that they weren't fighting with the cold efficiency of a military machine. They were fighting with the passionate fury of a species defending its young. "This is Sergeant Williams in Delta Company. My daughter asked me to bring her back a star from space. I'm going to rip one off that big ship over there." "Pilot Chen here. My grandmother survived the Beijing bombing in the last war," she told me never to let anyone hurt our family again. Today, humanity is my family. Engineering Chief Rodriguez reporting. My nephew wants to be an astronaut when he grows up. These aliens are not going to take his future away. Every human seemed to have personal reasons for fighting that went beyond military duty. They fought for their children, their families, their hopes for the future. This made them unpredictable and absolutely ruthless. When ammunition ran low, human crews used pieces of their own ships as projectiles. When weapons failed, they rammed enemy vessels while broadcasting messages to their families. When all seemed lost, they smiled and sang and died in ways that traumatized Veltar warriors, who had conquered dozens of worlds. Admiral, his aide said quietly, we've lost 70% of the fleet. The surviving ships are scattered across the system. Our warriors are requesting permission to retreat. Zephus looked at the tactical display, red dots representing his. Ships were disappearing faster than his computers could track. The humans had weapons that violated known physics, tactics that defied military logic, and a psychology that turned every individual into a willing sacrifice for the whole. But retreat was still impossible. The Veltar supremacy's reputation depended on victory. If word spread that humans had defeated them, every species in the galaxy would see the Veltar as weak. Their empire would collapse within years. We continue to Earth, Zephus ordered. Ready the planet-killer weapons. If we cannot conquer this world, we will destroy it completely. But even as he gave the order, Zephus felt a cold certainty growing in his chest. He had thought he was fighting primitive humans with simple technology. Instead, he had discovered the most dangerous military force in the galaxy, a species that had spent centuries preparing for exactly this type of invasion. The humans hadn't just built weapons, they had built a philosophy of warfare that turned every disadvantage into an advantage, every defeat into a victory, and every death into inspiration for the survivors. And he was about to learn what they had prepared for his final, desperate gambit. As the surviving Veltar ships limped toward Earth, Admiral Zephus discovered that everything he thought he knew about the human homeworld was wrong. The planet that had seemed defenseless from a distance was actually the most heavily fortified world in galactic history. Admiral, his sensor officer called out, voice shaking. You need to see this. The moon. It's not natural. The tactical display zoomed in on Earth's satellite. What had appeared to be a normal rocky moon was revealing its true nature as the Veltar fleet approached. Massive sections of the lunar surface were sliding away, revealing weapons that made Zephus's blood run cold. Those are dark matter cannons, his science officer whispered. Concentrated dark matter beams. They could erase matter at the quantum level. The moon opened fire. Beams of pure nothingness lanced out from hidden weapons bays, and wherever they touched Veltar ships, those ships simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but completely removed from reality, as if they had never been built. The frigate VTS Vengeance took a direct hit from a dark matter beam. For a split second, the ship was there. Then it wasn't. The space where it had been floating was completely empty, without even debris to mark its passing. How many weapons are on that moon? Zephus demanded. His tactical computer ran calculations and returned numbers that seemed impossible. Sir, the entire moon appears to be hollow. It's not a natural satellite. It's a weapons platform the size of a small world. But Luna Base was just the beginning. As the Veltar fleet moved closer to Earth, the planet revealed defense systems that defied every assumption about human technology. Massive structures rose from Earth's surface like metal mountains. Space elevators, his computer identified them. But these weren't simple transportation systems. They were launch tubes for weapons that turned the planet itself into a gun. Incoming projectiles from the surface, the sensor officer reported. Thousands of them. Earth's space elevators fired streams of projectiles in continuous volleys. Metal rods, fusion warheads, and stranger weapons rose from the planet's surface at impossible speeds. The electromagnetic launch systems accelerated them to significant fractions of light speed before they even left the atmosphere. They've turned their entire planet into a fortress, Zephus realized. Every city, every installation, every piece of infrastructure is part of their defense network. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the communication system. "This is your last warning, Admiral Zephus. You've seen what we can do with improvised weapons at the edge of our system. Now you're approaching our real defenses. Turn back or face the consequences." Zephus opened a channel to reply. "Human, you cannot possibly defend an entire planet against planet-killer weapons. We have antimatter bombs that can crack worlds in half." "We know," Chen replied calmly. "We've been preparing for that possibility for 300 years. The transmission cut off, and suddenly Zephus understood the true horror of his situation. The humans hadn't just built weapons to fight invaders. They had studied every recorded alien invasion in galactic history and prepared specific countermeasures for each type of attack. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system." "Whatever. The humans are preparing. It's drawing power from their star itself." Solar focusing arrays became visible as they unfolded from hidden positions around the inner planets. Mirrors the size of continents began directing the sun's energy into coherent beams. The humans had weaponized their own star. "They can channel the sun's output into directed energy weapons," the science officer reported in amazement. "The power levels are beyond anything we've ever recorded." But it wasn't just the impossible technology that broke Zephus's remaining confidence. It was the realization that humanity had been waiting for this exact scenario. Earth's defense network wasn't hastily assembled. It was the product of centuries of planning, preparation, and industrial effort. Every piece of technology, every defensive position, every tactical doctrine had been designed with one purpose: stopping exactly the kind of invasion Zephus was attempting. "They know about our quantum processors," his technology specialist reported. "They've deployed electromagnetic pulse weapons specifically designed to disrupt our neural implants. They know about our molecular disruptors and have developed quantum field generators to neutralize them. They know about our stealth technology and have sensors that can detect us anyway." The humans had studied the Veltar military doctrine in detail. Every weapon, every tactic, every technological advantage the Veltar possessed had a specific human countermeasure waiting for it. "How is this possible?" Zephus demanded. "We've never fought humans before. How could they know so much about our capabilities?" His intelligence officer pulled up intercepted human data files. "Sir, they've been studying every species in the galaxy. They have detailed analyses of 43 different military doctrines, including ours. They've war-gamed every possible invasion scenario and prepared responses for each one." "Admiral," Chen's voice returned to the communication system, but this time she wasn't speaking to Zephus. She was coordinating the final phase of Earth's defense, and what she revealed made Zephus realize the true scale of human preparation. "All defense sectors, this is command. The enemy is approaching phase line Alpha. Initiate Protocol 7. Repeat, initiate Protocol 7. Across Earth's surface, hidden installations activated. The planet's magnetic field began to shift and change, forming a containment system that trapped Veltar ships like insects in amber. The humans had weaponized the very forces that protected their world from cosmic radiation. "They're using their magnetic field as a cage," the navigation officer reported. "Our ships can't maneuver properly. Something is interfering with our propulsion systems." Zephus watched his remaining vessels struggle against invisible forces. The humans had turned their planet's natural defenses into weapons that could disable ships without firing a shot. But the most terrifying revelation came when Chen revealed humanity's ultimate deterrent. "Admiral Zephus," her voice was calm and professional, "you should know that Earth's sun is currently targeted by 27 solar manipulation devices. If our planet falls, we have the ability to trigger a controlled nova that will sterilize this entire system. We call it the Samson Protocol." Zephus felt something cold and sharp in his chest. "You would destroy your own world to stop us?" "We would destroy everything within 50 light-years to stop you," Chen replied. "And we've made sure every species in the galaxy knows it. Attack Earth, and we all die together. That's the price of threatening humanity's home." The tactical display showed the horrible truth. The humans hadn't just prepared to defend Earth. They had prepared to turn their entire solar system into a weapon that would eliminate any force threatening them, even if it meant their own extinction. "They're not just defending their planet," his aide whispered. They're willing to commit species suicide rather than be conquered. Zephus realized that he wasn't fighting a normal military force. He was fighting a species that had decided their freedom was worth any price, including their own lives. The humans would rather die as free beings than live as slaves. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we have 3 ships left operational. The rest of the fleet is gone." 3 ships. From 200 that had entered the system. The mighty Veltar supremacy had been reduced to a handful of survivors by a species they had thought was primitive. "We still have the planet killer weapons," Zephus said desperately. "We can destroy their world and claim victory through genocide." But even as he spoke, Zephus knew it was too late. The humans had shown him the truth. They weren't a primitive species that could be conquered through superior firepower. They were the galaxy's apex predators, and they had been waiting patiently for someone foolish enough to test them. Earth hung before them like a blue-green jewel, beautiful and deadly. Behind it, the sun burned with the promise of controlled destruction. Around it, weapons platforms waited silently for the command to end everything. Zephus had come to conquer a backward world. Instead, he had found the most dangerous military force in the galaxy, and it was about to teach him the final lesson in the consequences of arrogance. Admiral Zephus stood in the ruins of his command bridge, surrounded by sparking equipment and the bodies of his crew. 3 ships remained from his mighty fleet of 200. The humans had systematically destroyed everything else with weapons that violated the laws of physics and tactics that defied military logic. But Zephus still had one final card to play. Hidden in the cargo holds of his remaining ships were 12 antimatter bombs, each one capable of cracking a planet in half. If he couldn't conquer Earth, he would destroy it and claim victory through genocide. "Prepare the planet killer weapons," he ordered his surviving crew. "Launch them at maximum velocity toward the human world. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who resist the Veltar." His weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, if we destroy Earth, we'll have nothing to show for this campaign except dead worlds." "Then we'll have a message," Zephus snarled. "No species defies the Veltar and survives. Better a dead world than a living one that thinks it defeated us." The antimatter bombs launched from his ships like dark meteors, accelerating toward Earth at tremendous speed. Each weapon carried enough destructive force to turn continents into glass and boil oceans into steam. Zephus felt grim satisfaction as he watched them streak toward the blue-green planet. But his satisfaction lasted exactly 47 seconds. Earth's response to the planet killer weapons revealed the final, most terrifying aspect of human nature. When faced with complete extinction, humans didn't despair or surrender. They adapted. Admiral Chen's voice crackled across all communication frequencies, calm and professional, despite the apocalyptic weapons heading toward her world. "All civilian populations, this is Defense Command. We have incoming planet killers. Evacuation protocols are in effect. Military personnel, prepare for interception operations." Across Earth's surface, massive dome structures rose from hidden underground positions. Entire cities disappeared beneath protective shields that could withstand the heat of stars. The humans had prepared for this exact scenario. But the domes weren't their real defense against the antimatter bombs. That came from an entirely different direction. "Launch the volunteers," Chen ordered. From bases on Earth, Luna, and Mars, small, one-person ships began launching toward the incoming weapons. These weren't military vessels armed with advanced weapons. They were simple interceptors with just enough fuel to reach the antimatter bombs and basic communication equipment. Zephus watched in growing horror as he realized what the humans were doing. "They're sending pilots to ram our weapons. They're using manned spacecraft as interceptors." "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving transmissions from the interceptor pilots." The voice that came through the speakers belonged to a young human male, calm and determined despite flying toward certain death. "This is Lieutenant Jake Morrison in Interceptor 7. I can see the big ugly bomb heading for New York. That's where my sister lives." "Not today, alien, not today." The interceptor ship, barely larger than a fighter craft, rammed into the antimatter bomb at tremendous speed. The collision triggered a controlled detonation far from Earth, lighting up space like a small sun. "Lieutenant, Morrison and his ship vanished in the explosion, but his sacrifice had saved millions of lives. More voices joined the communications channels as other interceptor pilots approached their targets. "This is Captain Sarah Kim. My parents live in Seoul. See you in the next life, aliens. Pilot Chen here. My daughter just started school yesterday. She's going to get the chance to graduate. This is Commander Rodriguez. For Earth, for humanity, for the future." One by one, human pilots flew their ships into antimatter bombs, triggering controlled detonations that lit up the solar system. Each pilot knew they wouldn't survive, yet hundreds volunteered. Their final transmissions revealed the psychology that made humans the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They weren't just fighting for military victory. They were fighting for their families, their children, their dreams of the future. Every pilot had personal reasons that made death preferable to defeat. "How many volunteers did they have?" Zephus whispered, watching the last antimatter bomb destroyed by a pilot who sang something called Country Roads as he died. His intelligence officer checked the intercepted communications. "Sir, they had over 3,000 volunteers for 12 interception missions. They had to turn people away. 3,000 humans willing to die to save their world. The mighty Veltar, enhanced with fear suppression technology and trained from birth for war, could barely comprehend such dedication. But the humans weren't finished. With the planet killer threat neutralized, they turned their attention to Zephus's remaining ships. The pursuit craft that emerged from Earth weren't massive dreadnoughts or heavily armed cruisers. They were small, fast vessels designed for one purpose: hunting down survivors. "They're not trying to capture us," his tactical officer reported. "They're hunting us for sport." The human pursuit ships moved like pack hunters, coordinating their attacks with cold precision. They disabled Zephus's engines first, then his weapons, then his life support systems. They wanted him alive. "Admiral," his aide said quietly, "they're demanding our surrender. They want to put us on trial." Zephus looked at the tactical display showing his two remaining ships, crippled and surrounded by human vessels. The mighty Veltar supremacy had been reduced to war criminals awaiting judgment. "I am High Admiral Zephus of the Veltar supremacy," he broadcast on all frequencies. "I do not surrender to primitives." Admiral Chen's response came immediately. "You're not surrendering to primitives, Admiral. You're surrendering to the species that just exterminated your entire invasion force with minimal losses. Your choice is simple. Surrender now or we'll take you by force." The boarding parties that cut through his hull weren't the savage barbarians Zephus expected. They were professional soldiers wearing advanced armor and carrying weapons that made Veltar technology look primitive. They moved with the precision of a species that had been preparing for this moment for centuries. Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Marines removed her helmet as she entered Zephus's command center. Her face was young, but her eyes held the cold determination of a born predator. "Admiral Zephus," she said politely, "you're under arrest for crimes against humanity and violations of galactic law. You have the right to remain silent, though I doubt you'll use it." Zephus was transported to Luna Base for trial. The courtroom was filled with representatives from species across the galaxy, all of them watching to see what humanity would do with their defeated enemy. Admiral Chen served as both prosecutor and judge. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of absolute authority. "Admiral Zephus, you were warned by 43 different species to stay away from Earth. You ignored those warnings and brought a fleet of 200 ships to conquer our world. Your actions resulted in the deaths of 200,000 Veltar personnel and 50,000 human defenders." Zephus stood in shackles, his biomechanical armor removed and his implants disabled. For the first time in his life, he looked small and powerless. "I was following the military doctrine of the Veltar supremacy," he said. "We are conquerors. It is our nature." "Your nature," Chen replied coldly, "brought about the extinction of your species." She activated a holographic display showing the Veltar homeworld. 3 hours ago, your government received a complete recording of this battle, along with detailed technical specifications of human weapons. The message we sent was simple. Your fleet is gone, your admiral is captured, your supremacy is ended. The hologram showed Veltar cities in chaos as the news spread. Government buildings burned. Military installations were abandoned. Civilian populations fled in panic as they realized their invincible military had been completely destroyed by a single human world. The Veltar supremacy collapsed within hours of receiving our message, Chen continued. Your subject species have rebelled. Your military has disbanded, your empire is gone, all because you were too arrogant to listen to warnings. Zephus felt something break inside his chest. His species, his empire, his entire way of life had been destroyed not by military conquest, but by the simple demonstration that the Veltar were not invincible. What will you do with me? He asked quietly. Chen considered for a moment. You'll spend the rest of your life in a comfortable prison, Admiral. We're not monsters. But you'll also serve as a living reminder of what happens when someone ignores our warnings. The trial was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species that had ever considered challenging humanity watched as the mighty Veltar Empire collapsed, overnight. The message was clear. The warnings around Earth weren't suggestions. They were promises. 6 months later, new warning beacons were placed around the Sol system. The message was updated and broadcast in 67 languages. This system is defended by humanity. They offered mercy once. They will not offer it again. The Veltar tested them and achieved extinction. Turn back now, or join them in the history books. In the years that followed, no species ever again tested Earth's defenses. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The warnings weren't there to protect humans from alien invaders. They were there to protect the galaxy from humanity. Admiral Zephus spent his remaining years in a cell on Luna Base, looking up at the blue-green world that had destroyed his empire. Sometimes, late at night, he could hear human children laughing in the corridors above his prison. They were the children of the pilots who had died stopping his planet-killer weapons. Children who would grow up free because their parents had been willing to pay any price to stop him. And in those moments, Zephus finally understood what the galaxy had tried to warn him about. Humans weren't just another species to be conquered. They were the guardians of their own future, and they would destroy anyone who tried to take that future away. The warnings had been real, the consequences had been absolute, and the price of arrogance had been extinction.